The Book of Exodus, Chapter 12, Amplified Bible. The Passover Lamb. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, "This month shall be the beginning of months to you. It is to be the first month of the year to you. Tell all the congregation of Israel, on the 10th day of this month, they are to take a lamb or young goat for themselves, according to the size of the household, of which he is the father, a lamb or young goat for each household. Now, if the household is too small for a lamb to be consumed, let him and the next door neighbor take one according to the number of people in the households. According to what each man can eat, you are to divide the lamb. Your lamb or young goat shall be perfect, without blemish or bodily defect, a male a year old. You may take it from the sheep or from the goats. You shall keep it until the 14th day of the same month. Then the whole assembly of the congregation of Israel is to slaughter it at twilight. Moreover, they shall take some of the blood and put it on the 2 doorposts and on the lintel above the door of the houses in which they eat it. They shall eat the meat that same night, roasted in fire, and they shall eat it with unleavened bread and bitter herbs. Do not eat any of it raw or boiled in water, but roasted in fire, both its head and its legs, along with its inner parts. You shall let none of the meat remain until the morning, and anything that remains left over until morning you shall burn completely in the fire. Now you are to eat it in this manner. Be prepared for a journey, with your loins girded, that is, with the outer garments tucked into the band, your sandals on your feet, and your staff in your hand. You shall eat it quickly. It is the Lord's Passover. For I, the Lord, will pass through the land of Egypt on this night, and will strike down all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both man and animal. Against all the gods of Egypt I will execute judgments, exhibiting their worthlessness. I am the Lord. The blood shall be a sign for you on the doorpost of the houses where you live. When I see the blood, I shall pass over you, and no affliction shall happen to you to destroy you when I strike the land of Egypt. Feast of Unleavened Bread. Now this day will be a memorial to you, and you shall keep it as a feast to the Lord. Throughout your generations, you are to celebrate it as an ordinance forever. And the celebration of the Passover in future years, 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread. But on the first day you shall remove the leaven from your houses, because it represents the spread of sin. For whoever eats leavened bread on the first day through the 7th day, the person shall be cut off and excluded from atonement made for Israel. On the first day of the feast, you shall have a holy and solemn assembly, and on the 7th day there shall be another holy and solemn assembly. No work of any kind shall be done on those days, except for the preparation of food, which every person must eat, only that may be done by you. You shall also observe the feast of unleavened bread, because on this very day I brought your hosts, grouped according to tribal armies, out of the land of Egypt. Therefore, you shall observe this day throughout your generations as an ordinance forever. In the first month, on the 14th day of the morning at evening, you shall eat unleavened bread, and continue until the 21st day of the month at evening. 7 days no leaven shall be found in your houses. Whoever eats what is leavened shall be cut off and excluded from the atonement made for the congregation of Israel, whether a stranger or native born. You shall eat nothing leavened in your dwellings. In all your dwellings you shall eat unleavened bread. Then Moses called for all the elders of Israel and said to them, Go and take a lamb for yourselves according to the size of your families, and slaughter the Passover lamb. You shall take a bunch of hyssop, dip it into the blood, which is in the basin, and touch some of the blood to the lintel above the doorway, and to the 2 doorposts, and none of you shall go outside the door of his house until morning. A memorial of redemption. For the Lord will pass through to strike the Egyptians, and when he sees the blood on the lintel above the entryway and on the 2 doorposts, the Lord will pass over the door and will not allow the destroyer to come into your houses to slay you. You shall observe this event concerning Passover as an ordinance for you and for your children forever. When you enter the land which the Lord will give you, as he has promised, you shall keep and observe this service. When your children say to you, What does this mean to you? You shall say, It is the sacrifice of the Lord's Passover, for he passed over the houses of the Israelites in Egypt when he struck the Egyptians, but spared our houses. And the people bowed their heads low and worshiped God. Then the Israelites went and did as they had been told. Just as the Lord had commanded Moses and Aaron, so they did. Now it happened at midnight that the Lord struck every firstborn in the land of Egypt, from the firstborn of Pharaoh, who sat on his throne, to the firstborn of the prisoner who was in the dungeon, and all the firstborn of the cattle. Pharaoh got up in the night, he and all his servants and all the Egyptians, and there was a great cry of heartache and sorrow in Egypt, for there was no house where there was not someone dead. Then he called for Moses and Aaron at night and said, Get up, get out from among my people, both you and the Israelites, and go, serve the Lord as you said. Take both your flocks and your herds as you have said, and go and ask your God to bless me also. Exodus of Israel. The Egyptians anxiously urged the people to leave, to send them out of the land quickly, for they said, We will all be dead. So the people took their dough before it was leavened, their kneading bowls being bound up in their clothes on their shoulders. Now the Israelites had acted in accordance with the word of Moses, and they had asked the Egyptians for articles of silver and articles of gold and clothing. The Lord gave the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians, so that they gave them what they asked. And so they plundered Egyptians of those things. Now the Israelites journeyed from Ramses to Succoth, about 600,000 men on foot, besides the women and the children. A mixed multitude of non-Israelites from foreign nations also went with them, along with both flocks and herds, a very large number of livestock. And they baked unleavened cakes of the dough which they brought from Egypt. It was not leavened, since they were driven quickly from Egypt and could not delay, nor had they prepared any food for themselves. Now the period of time the children of Israel lived in Egypt was 430 years. At the end of the 430 years, to that very day, all the hosts of the Lord gathered into tribal armies, left the land of Egypt. Ordinance of the Passover. It is a night of watching to be observed for the Lord, for having brought them out of the land of Egypt. This same night is for the Lord, to be observed and celebrated by all the Israelites throughout their generations. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron, "This is the ordinance of the Passover. No foreigner is to eat it, but every man's slave who is bought with money, after you have circumcised him, then he may eat it. No stranger, temporary resident, foreigner, or hired servant shall eat it. It is to be eaten inside one house. You shall not take any of the meat outside the house, nor shall you break any of its bones. The entire congregation of Israel shall keep and celebrate it. If a stranger living temporarily among you wishes to celebrate the Passover to the Lord, all his males must be circumcised, and then he may participate and celebrate it like one that is born into the land. But no uncircumcised person may eat it. The same law shall apply to the native born and to the stranger who lives temporarily among you." Then all the Israelites did so. They did just as the Lord had commanded Moses and Aaron. And on that very same day, the Lord brought the Israelites out of the land of Egypt by their host, tribal armies. Exodus chapter 13, Amplified Bible. Consecration of the firstborn. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "Sanctify to me, that is, set apart for my purpose, every firstborn, the first offspring of every womb among the children of Israel, both of man and of animal. It is mine." Moses said to the people, "Remember solemnly, observe, and commemorate this day on which you came out of Egypt, out of the house of bondage and slavery. For by a strong and powerful hand the Lord brought you out of this place, and nothing leavened shall be eaten. On this day, in the month of Abib, you are about to go onward. And it shall be, when the Lord brings you into the land of the Canaanite and the Hittite, the Amorite, the Hivite, the Jebusite, which he swore to your fathers to give you, a land of abundance, flowing with milk and honey, that you shall keep and observe this rite service in this month. For 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread, and on the 7th day there shall be a feast to the Lord. Unleavened bread shall be eaten throughout the 7 days. No leavened bread shall be seen with you, nor shall there be leaven with the borders of your territory. You shall explain this to your son on that day, saying, it is because of what the Lord did for me when I came out of Egypt. It shall serve as a sign to you on your hand, arm, and as a reminder on your forehead, so that the instruction, law of the Lord may be in your mouth. For with a strong and powerful hand the Lord brought you out of Egypt. Therefore, you shall keep this ordinance at this time from year to year. Now it shall be, when the Lord brings you into the land of the Canaanite, as he swore to you and your fathers, and gives it to you, you shall set apart and dedicate to the Lord all that first opens the womb. All the firstborn males of your livestock shall be the Lord's. Every firstborn of a donkey you shall redeem by substituting a lamb as a sacrifice for it. But if you do not wish to redeem it, then you shall break its neck, and every firstborn among your sons you shall redeem, that is, buy back from God, with a suitable sacrifice. And it shall be when your son asks you in time to come, saying, what does this mean? You shall say to him, with a strong and powerful hand, the Lord brought us out of Egypt from the house of bondage and slavery. For it happened when Pharaoh stubbornly refused to let us go, that the Lord struck every firstborn in the land of Egypt, both the firstborn of man and the firstborn of animal. Therefore, I sacrifice to the Lord all the males, the firstborn, the first to be born of every womb, but every firstborn of my sons I redeem. So it shall serve as a sign and a reminder on your left hand, arm, and as frontlets between your eyes. For by a strong and powerful hand the Lord has brought us out of Egypt. God leads the people. So it happened, when Pharaoh let the people go, God did not lead them by way of the land of the Philistines, even though it was near. For God said, the people might change their minds when they see war. That is, that there will be war, and return to Egypt. But God led the people around by the way of the wilderness toward the Red Sea. The sons of Israel went up in battle array, orderly ranks, marching formation out of the land of Egypt. Moses took the bones of Joseph with him, for Joseph had solemnly placed under an oath the Israelites, saying, God will assuredly take care of you, and you must carry my bones away from here with you. They journeyed from Succoth and Goshen and camped at Etham on the edge of the wilderness. The presence of the Lord was going before them by day in a pillar column of cloud to lead them along the way, and in a pillar of fire by night to give them light, so that they could travel by day and by night. He did not withdraw the pillar of cloud by day, nor the pillar of fire by night from going before the people. Exodus chapter 14, Amplified Bible. Pharaoh in pursuit. Now the Lord spake to Moses, saying, Tell the sons of Israel to turn back and camp in front of Pharaoh, between Migdol and the sea. You shall camp in front of Baal Zephon, opposite it by the sea. For Pharaoh will say of the Israelites, They are wandering aimlessly in the land. The wilderness has shut them in. I will harden, make stubborn, defiant Pharaoh's heart, so that he will pursue them. And I will be glorified and honored through Pharaoh and all his army, and the Egyptians shall know without any doubt and acknowledge that I am the Lord. And they did so. When the king of Egypt was told that the people had fled, Pharaoh and his servants had a change of heart toward the people. And they said, What is this that we have done? We have let Israel go from serving us? So Pharaoh harnessed horses to his war chariots for battle, and took his army with him. And he took 600 chosen war chariots, and all the other war chariots of Egypt, with fighting charioteers over all of them. The Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and he pursued the Israelites as they were leaving confidently and defiantly. The Egyptians chased them with all the horses and war chariots of Pharaoh, his horsemen and his army, and they overtook them as they camped by the sea beside Pharaoh, in front of Baal Zephon. As Pharaoh approached, the Israelites looked up and saw the Egyptians marching after them, and they were frightened. So the Israelites cried out to the Lord. Then they said to Moses, Is it because there are no graves in Egypt that you have taken us away to die in the wilderness? What is this that you have done to us by bringing us out of Egypt? Did we not say to you in Egypt, Leave us alone, let us serve the Egyptians? For it would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians as slaves than to die in the wilderness. The sea is divided. Then Moses said to the people, Do not be afraid. Take your stand, be firm and confident and undismayed, and see the salvation of the Lord, which he will accomplish for you today. For those Egyptians whom you have seen today, you will never see again. The Lord will fight for you, while you only need to keep silent and remain calm. The Lord said to Moses, Why do you cry to me? Tell the sons of Israel to move forward toward the sea. As for you, lift up your staff and stretch out your hand over the sea and divide it, so that the sons of Israel may go through the middle of the sea on dry land. As for me, hear this. I will harden the hearts of the Egyptians, and they will go in the sea after them. And I will be glorified and honored through Pharaoh and all his army and his war chariots and his horsemen. And the Egyptians shall know without any doubt and acknowledge that I am the Lord when I am glorified and honored through Pharaoh, through his war chariots and his charioteers. The angel of the Lord, who had been going in front of the camp of Israel, moved and went behind them. The pillar of the cloud moved from in front and stood behind them. So it came between the camp of Egypt and the camp of Israel. It was a cloud along with darkness, even by day, to the Egyptians, but it gave light by night to the Israelites. So one army did not come near the other all night. Then Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the Lord swept the sea back by a strong east wind all that night and turned the seabed into dry land, and the waters were divided. The Israelites went into the middle of the sea on dry land, and the waters formed a wall to them on their right hand and on their left. Then the Egyptians pursued them into the middle of the sea, even all Pharaoh's horses, his war chariots, and his charioteers. So it happened at the early morning watch before dawn that the Lord looked down on the army of the Egyptians through the pillar of fire and cloud and put them in a state of confusion. He made their chariot wheels hard to turn and the chariots difficult to drive. So the Egyptians said, "Let us flee from Israel, for the Lord is fighting for them against the Egyptians." Then the Lord said to Moses, "Stretch out your hand over the sea, so that the waters may come back over the Egyptians on their war chariots and their charioteers." So Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the sea returned to its normal flow at sunrise. And the Egyptians retreated right into it, being met by the returning water. So the Lord overthrew the Egyptians and tossed them into the midst of the sea. The waters returned and covered the chariots and the charioteers, and all the army of Pharaoh that had gone into the sea after them. Not even one of them survived. But the Israelites walked on dry land in the middle of the sea, and the waters formed a wall to them on their right and on their left. The Lord saved Israel that day from the hand of the Egyptians, and Israel saw the Egyptians lying dead on the shore. When Israel saw the great power which the Lord had used against the Egyptians, they feared the Lord with reverence and awe-filled respect, and they believed in the Lord and in his servant Moses. Glory to God. Exodus chapter 15, Amplified Bible. The Song of Moses and Israel. Then Moses and the children of Israel sang this song to the Lord, singing, "I will sing to the Lord, for he has triumphed gloriously. The horse and its rider he has thrown into the sea. The Lord is my strength and my song, and he has become my salvation. This is my God, and I will praise him, my Father's God, and I will exalt him. The Lord is a warrior. The Lord is his name. Pharaoh's chariots and his army he has thrown into the sea. His chosen captains are drowned in the Red Sea. The deep water covers them. Clad in armor, they sank into the depths like a stone. Your right hand, O Lord, is glorious in power. Your right hand, O Lord, shatters the enemy. And the greatness of your majesty, you overthrow and annihilate those adversaries who rise in rebellion against you. You send out your fury, and it consumes them like chaff. With the blast of your nostrils, the waters pile up. The flowing waters stood up like a mound. The deeps were congealed in the heart of the sea. The enemy said, I will pursue, I will overtake, I will divide the spoil. My desire shall be satisfied against them. I will draw my sword, my hand shall dispossess them and drive them out. You blew with your wind. The sea covered them. Clad in armor, they sank like lead in the mighty waters. Who is like you among gods, O Lord? Who is like you, majestic in holiness, awesome in splendor, working wonders? You stretched out your right hand, and the sea swallowed them. You, in your loving kindness and goodness, have led the people whom you have redeemed. In your strength, you have guided them with care to your holy habitation. The peoples have heard about you. They tremble. Anguish and fear has gripped the inhabitants of Philistia. Then the tribal chiefs of Edom were dismayed and horrified. The mighty leaders of Moab, trembling, grips them. All the inhabitants of Canaan have melted away in despair. Terror and dread fall on them because of the greatness of your army, your arm. They are as still as a stone until your people pass by and into Canaan, O Lord, until the people pass by whom you have purchased. You will bring them into the land of promise and plant them on the mountain, Mount Moriah in Jerusalem, of your inheritance, the place, O Lord, you have made for your dwelling among them, the sanctuary, O Lord, which your hands have established. The Lord shall reign to eternity and beyond. For the horses of Pharaoh went with his war chariots and his charioteers into the sea, and the Lord brought back the waters of the sea on them. But the sons of Israel walked on dry land in the middle of the sea. Then Miriam, the prophetess, the sister of Aaron and Moses, took a timbrel in her hand, and all the women followed her with timbrels and dancing. Miriam answered them, Sing to the Lord, for he has triumphed gloriously and is highly exalted. The horse and its rider he is hurled into the sea. The Lord provides water. Then Moses led Israel from the Red Sea, and they went into the wilderness of Shur. They went a distance of 3 days, about 33 miles, in the wilderness, and found no water. Then they came to Marah, but they could not drink its waters because they were bitter. Therefore it was named Marah, bitter. The people grew discontented and grumbled at Moses, saying, What are we going to drink? Then he cried to the Lord for help, and the Lord showed him a tree, a branch of which he threw into the waters, and the waters became sweet. There the Lord made a statute and an ordinance for them, and there he tested them, saying, If you will diligently listen and pay attention to the voice of the Lord your God, and do what is right in his sight, and listen to his commandments, and keep foremost in your thoughts, and actively obey all his precepts and statutes, then I will not put on you any of the diseases which I have put on the Egyptians, for I am the Lord who heals you. Then the children of Israel came to Elim, where there were 12 springs of water, and 70 date palms, and they camped there beside the waters. Exodus chapter 16, Amplified Bible. The Lord provides manna. They set out from Elim, and all the congregation of Israel came to the wilderness of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai, on the 15th day of the 2nd month after they left the land of Egypt. The whole congregation of the Israelites grew discontented and murmured and rebelled against Moses and Aaron in the wilderness. And the Israelites said to them, "Would that we had died by the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt, when we sat by the pots of meat and ate bread until we were full? For you have brought us out into the wilderness to kill this entire assembly with hunger." Then the Lord said to Moses, "Behold, I will cause bread to rain from heaven for you. The people shall go out and gather a day's portion every day, so that I may test them to determine whether or not they will walk obediently in my instruction law. And it shall be that on the 6th day they shall prepare to bring in twice as much as they gather daily, so that they will not need to gather on the 7th day." So Moses and Aaron said to all Israel, "At evening you shall know that the Lord has brought you out of the land of Egypt, and in the morning you will see the glory of the Lord, for he hears your murmurings against the Lord. What are we that you murmur and rebel against us?" The Lord provides meat. Moses said, "This will happen when the Lord gives you meat to eat in the evening, and in the morning enough bread to be fully satisfied, because the Lord has heard your murmurings against him. For what are we? Your murmurings are not against us, but against the Lord." Then Moses said to Aaron, "Say to all the congregation of Israel, approach the Lord, because he has heard your murmurings." So it happened that as Aaron spoke to the whole congregation of Israel, they looked toward the wilderness, and behold, the glory and brilliance of the Lord appeared in the cloud. Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "I have heard the murmurings of the Israelites. Speak to them, saying, at twilight you shall eat meat, and in the morning you shall be filled with bread. And you shall know that I am the Lord your God." So in the evening, the quails came up and covered the camp. And in the morning, there was a blanket of dew around the camp. When the layer of dew evaporated on the surface of the wilderness, there was a fine flake-like thing, as fine as frost on the ground. When the Israelites saw it, they said to one another, "What is it?" For they did not know what it was. And Moses said to them, "This is the bread which the Lord has given you to eat. This is what the Lord has commanded. Let every man gather as much of it as he needs. Take an omer for each person, according to the number of people each of you has in his tent." The Israelites did so, and some gathered much of it, and some only a little. When they measured it with an omer, he who had gathered a large amount had no excess, and he who had gathered little had no lack. Every man gathered according to his need, family size. Moses said, "Let none of it be left overnight until the next morning." But they did not listen to Moses, and some have left a supply of it until morning, and it bred worms and became foul and rotten. And Moses was angry with them. So they gathered it every morning, each as much as he needed, because when the sun was hot, it melted. The Sabbath observed. Now on the 6th day, they gathered twice as much bread, 2 omers for each person, and all the leaders of the congregation came and told Moses. He said to them, "This is what the Lord has said. Tomorrow is a solemn rest, a holy Sabbath to the Lord. Bake and boil what you will bake and boil today, and all that remains left over, put it aside for yourselves to keep until morning." They put it aside until morning as Moses told them, and it did not become foul, nor was it worming. Then Moses said, "Eat that today, for today is a Sabbath to the Lord. Today you will not find it in the field. 6 days you shall gather it, but on the 7th day, the Sabbath, there will be none in the field." Now on the 7th day, some of the people went out to gather, but they found none. Then the Lord said to Moses, "How long do you people refuse to keep my commandments and my instructions, laws? See, the Lord has given you the Sabbath. Therefore, he gives you the bread for 2 days on the 6th day. Let every man stay in his place. No man is to leave his place on the 7th day." So the people rested on the 7th day. The house of Israel called the bread manna. It was like coriander seed, white, and it tasted like flat pastry wafers made with honey. Then Moses said, "This is the word which the Lord commands. Let an omer of it be kept throughout your generations, that they may see the bread with which I fed you in the wilderness, when I brought you out of the land of Egypt." So Moses said to Aaron, "Take a pot and put an omer of manna in it, and place it before the Lord to be kept throughout your generations. As the Lord commanded Moses, so Aaron eventually placed it in the presence of the testimony to be kept. The Israelites ate manna 40 years until they reached an inhabited land. They ate the manna until they came to the border of the land of Canaan. Now, an omer is the 10th of an ephah. Exodus chapter 17, Amplified Bible. Water in the rock. Then all the congregation of the children of Israel moved from the wilderness of sin by stages, according to the commandment of the Lord, and camped in Rephidim. But there was no water for the people to drink. Therefore, the people quarreled with Moses and said, "Give us water so that we may have something to drink." And Moses said to them, "Why do you quarrel with me? Why do you tempt the Lord and try his patience?" But the people were thirsty for water. And the people murmured against Moses and said, "Why did you bring us up from Egypt to kill us and our children and our livestock with thirst?" So Moses cried out to the Lord for help, saying, "What shall I do with this people? They are almost ready to stone me." Then the Lord said to Moses, "Pass before the people and take with you some of the elders of Israel, and take in your hand the staff with which you struck the Nile, and go. Behold, I will stand before you there on the rock at Horeb. There you shall strike the rock, and water will come out of it, so that the people may have something to drink." And Moses did so in the sight of the elders of Israel. He named the place where this miracle occurred Massah, test, and Meribah, contention, because of the quarreling of the sons of Israel, and because they tested the patience of the Lord, saying, "Is the Lord among us or not?" Amalek fought. Then Amalek and his people came and fought with Israel at Rephidim. So Moses said to Joshua, "Choose men for us and go out, fight against Amalek and his people. Tomorrow I will stand on the top of the hill with the staff of God in my hand." So Joshua said and did as Moses said, and fought with Amalek. And Moses and Aaron and Hur went up to the hilltop. When Moses held up his hand, Israel prevailed. And when he lowered his hand due to fatigue, Amalek prevailed. But Moses' hands were heavy, and he grew tired, so that they took a stone and put it under him, and he sat on it. Then Aaron and Hur held up his hands, one on one side and one on the other side. So it was that his hands were steady until the sun set. So Joshua overwhelmed and defeated Amalek and his people with the edge of the sword. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Write this in the book as a memorial and recite it to Joshua, that I will utterly wipe out the memory of Amalek and his people from under heaven." And Moses built an altar and named it, "The Lord is my banner," saying, "The Lord has sworn an oath. The Lord will have war against the people of Amalek from generation to generation." Glory to God. Until next time, see, hear, and do as God instructs you.